All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Layman's Law School. Today, we're going to talk about P. Diddy for the second time, maybe get into a little of the grits and the gravy of it. But before we start, as always, this is my good friend and partner, Shawn Merzlack. How are you today?
Always happy to be here, buddy. It's a beautiful Friday.
And Miss Tianna Bias, partner of ours that works with us and does a fantastic job. Happy Friday to you.
Yes, couldn't think of a better place to be.
Oh, I'm sure you could, but, you know, I appreciate you being here regardless.
And just like Chase, she has expressed to me that she has a strong dislike for your beverage of choice.
Well, that's why I bring it.
Exactly.
That's why I bring it. I mean, listen, if a long, hard, grueling work week deserves some Bud Light. So, listen, just... You know, just oh, look at you go! Look at you go!
Yeah, imagine how hate will motivate you to get things done.
Y'all didn't even cheers. I mean,
cheers.
Just take your time.
I'm
with
thirsty,
it.
buddy.
Take
thirsty.
your time with it.
Like
Enjoy it. Let it flow. Let it flow. Ugh.
Disgusting.
What is your drink of choice there?
Well, this was given to me by a man with a little bit more class, Shawn. It's a Dirty Girl Vodka Rita, so I'm going to take my chances with that.
She had it last week.
It was great.
It's a local Augusta drink, and she said that she loved it, so
yeah,
I wanted to make her feel at home on
she
her second
a dirty girl
debut of the podcast.
I hate that I missed that. I wanted to see you crash and burn, but evidently from the videos that I've seen, you did great. So
God plays favorites, and I'm glad to be one of them.
So y'all discussed a little bit of like more of the transactional stuff that was going on in P. Diddy's case and how it came to be. And so today, I would like to kind of talk about a little bit of that, but some of, you know, maybe a little conspiracy theory. Look, I've been known to be called a conspiracy theorist. Yes, shocking.
No, I've never seen you go down the rabbit hole.
There's just some things in this case that are very interesting and strange. And to lawyers, some things that we may go, why did that happen? Where the layman, so to speak, may not. The first one of those things is so this all became, and I know y'all talked about, you know, where this had to take place and all that kind of stuff on the last one. But one of the things that's interesting about this case is where it is and how it came to be. And so it's in New York City. And why is that, Tianna? There's an Adult Survivors Act. Kind of explain what that is and just, you know, general conversation. Why?
Okay, so the Adult Survivors Act is basically a look-back act where there were a lot of people who wouldn't be able to sue otherwise because the statute of limitations prevented them from doing so.
Right.
So in May of 2022, the governor for New York signed this act that said, hey, in 6 months, in November of 2022, you're going to have a year to sue anybody who you think violated your civil rights, whether it was a sexual act or some other crime that you want to sue them civilly because you have that option to do so. And so then within the last year, between November 2022, November 2023, they had about 3,000 people who got sued, and Diddy happened to be one of those people.
Well, and it's just, you know, one of those things where you have a legal problem that people are seeing. Obviously, we're aware that
I'm sorry to cut you off. I'm sure a lot of this came out of the Me Too movement.
Oh, sure.
You know, and from my understanding and my reading with this act is it's really targeted at people in power and saying, hey, man, you know, you may have gotten, you know, like we were talking earlier, these you know, rich wigs up, you know, whatever, think they got away with it. This is like, hey, guys.
Yeah. People have a little more courage.
We see all the time that, you know, people that are victims of sexual assaults, sexual harassment, you know, stuff like that, don't necessarily always report it immediately. Or they may
they feel shame.
Yeah,
you know?
shamed, or, you know, especially when it involves ones like the P. Diddy case, where people are basically alleging that they got a leg up or became part of this inner circle and were promised to get a leg up if they did these things. You know, so they feel even, you know, more ashamed, you know, that they were involved in it and coerced into doing things like this. So it kind of just said, okay, we acknowledge that there's a lot of people out there that are prevented from filing a civil lawsuit because of the statute of limitations, but we're going to clear it all up and we're going to give you a year to file if you.
And it's kind of like one of those. hey guys, one last chance. Listen, if speak now, forever hold your peace type things.
Correct. Yeah.
Because I mean, in criminal law, there are some statutes, but that's
like
getting into
that's
getting into the weeds.
Yeah.
But in sexual stuff generally, criminally there is none, and that's usually for most states. And like I said, that's not always for the folks out there. It's not always, but there's a lot of ways to get around those statutes criminally. But here's what you got to remember in criminal law, and y'all know it better than I do, is that evidence, especially in sexual assault cases and these types of cases, evidence, just like in premise cases for us, goes away like that.
Yeah.
Sure.
So if you're having to meet the criminal burden, let's say you don't have the courage to come forward for 10 years. Well, civilly, your case is over.
Yeah.
Your case is gone. And criminally, you can still go to the district attorney and say, hey, this is what happened to me. But how, I mean, y'all talk about what are your chances 10 years later to prove a he said, she said case in criminal beyond a reasonable doubt?
Well, and it all boils down, it's going to boil down, if it can be pursued criminally, to, credibility issues. Because there's not going to be evidence there. And that's a problem for both sides.
Sure.
That's a problem for the alleged victim in the case and the prosecutor, but it's also a problem and kind of a due process issue. That's why we have statute of limitations for the person accused. If I would have known about this allegation a long time ago, maybe an accused person, could have found evidence or would have kept evidence that could have exonerated me, type thing.
Yep, that's very true. Because if you don't, I have trouble with this. I have trouble with statute of limitations in general. But I see both sides. I civilly, I mean.
Yeah. And then you have to add in the money factor. So as a victim, like let's say the Cassie lawsuit, right? It's very difficult to get a jury to feel as though you were a victim. If you dated him for a decade, you became a multimillionaire during that relationship, and you don't have any DNA evidence. A lot of her allegations happen behind closed doors.
Right.
And so for her, after speaking to an attorney, she probably felt like her chances were better in a court that was governed under civil law because she doesn't have as high of a burden.
100%.
And you don't have to get into the nitty gritty of, well, why were you around him if he was paying you all this money, X, Y, Z? And so she kind of lost some of that sympathy in the criminal realm because people like to try to get an explanation of why wouldn't you report it.
And in the criminal world, too, if you're dealing with the kind of allegations that Diddy, and we'll talk about Clive Davis here in a minute, that these kind of people are dealing with, criminally, if it's 10 years down the road, they're going to be able to sway a juror, in my opinion.
Much more likely.
They got the power and the money.
Yeah,
and
the power, the money,
and the
emotional aspect sometimes doesn't.
Well, and very often in criminal cases, unless they are pursued like in a RICO, type allegation, it's going to be individual cases.
Right.
You don't necessarily, unless, there are certain laws that allow for other acts type evidence to come in. But mostly in criminal cases, the rule is that, you can't use other acts. You can't say, well, Shawn, shoplifted 15 years ago.
Right.
Therefore, Shawn is very likely to have committed this, theft by taking of a bicycle 15 years later. The laws prohibit that. So in a civil action, especially the one like Lil Rod is pursuing, he's lumped an entire bunch of things in there.
An army of charges.
A racketeering type charge that shows a pattern of this. And when you can put all of that in front of a jury, it's not just you saying, I had these 1, 2, 3 incidents where Shawn Combs did this to me, but he did this to this person, this person, this person, this person. You're much more likely to sway a jury in a civil case when you have all that evidence than you would be if you were in a criminal case and you just went in there myself and said, hey, Shawn Combs did this to me.
Right. And this Adult Survivors Act, I think, is really interesting. And Tianna, like we were talking, and Shawn alluded to a little bit, but Lil Rod has this action against Diddy. But without this Adult Survivors Act, it would have been very limited, right?
Yeah, so for some of the claims it would have been, but some of Rodney's claims were a lot more recent. Obviously, Diddy's last album was the Love album, And so those wouldn't have necessarily been outside the statute of limitations. So
Right.
the new act ends in November of 2023, which means that anything that happens after November of 2023, you're well within your statute of limitations if you would have brought a lawsuit today.
Right.
But because he was doing some of that compiling of charges, like Shawn said, he's referring back to things that happened a decade ago or what happened with his ex, Kim Porter, or different things to make his case a much stronger one.
So, I mean, essentially in this type of thing, if this Adult Survivors Act didn't pass and wasn't enacted, I mean, you're probably talking, what would you guess, maybe a quarter of the allegations against Diddy? Maybe?
Which Rodney, he would have been in a better position than like Cassie, obviously, because a lot of her things happened a decade ago, whereas Rodney, he had a few years that had only transpired since the album started producing in 2020, 2022. But it would have really cut back his case tremendously, and especially if he's trying to get a settlement, then that really limits how much money he can go after.
Sure. Another thing that's interesting about it is timing. And you know, for us, timing is always an issue.
Yeah.
I mean, it always is.
We're always running out of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's when things happen and when, you know, especially in feds are different than state and all these other things. But it is interesting that Little Rod filed his suit one day before the expiration date of New York's Adult Survivors Act.
Yeah, that's definitely not a coincidence.
Right, exactly. For us, it's not. But
Yeah.
the general public, it may be.
Yeah.
Why is it not?
Well, it's just a matter of strategy for his attorney. One, you want to make a statement to show that, hey, this is what the statute allowed us to do. That's why we're making sure we do it right before the close of the statute. His attorney may say otherwise. He may say, oh, that was just a pure coincidence,
Well, sure,
right?
he's not going. Yeah, he's not going to give up.
It's also a really good time for. I'm not encouraging anybody to do this, but this isn't a bad time to sue P. Diddy, right? He's not a person who people like right now. He's all over the court of public opinion that people hate. Depends on the people, right? And so if anybody was going to bring a case against P. Diddy, now's the time to strike while the iron is hot.
Yeah.
People aren't happy with him. A lot of people are siding with his victims. This is a time where people say, oh, if you're saying Diddy did something to you, he definitely did it. Like they have the little catchphrase that we were talking about, the Diddy do it.
Yeah,
so,
it leads to, it's just so easy, right? You just tee it up. Did he do it?
What did he do?
What did he do? What did he not? And his prior nicknames just make it worse. Puff. I mean, come on, you know. I'm not English, but that word in England means something different. But anyways, it just means to, you know.
That's news to me. I'm not English either, but
I couldn't tell.
But
Anyway.
I mean, we do have some other people who might be of English descent who are involved, like Clive Davis and some other people that they're saying obviously could have exposed Diddy to some of these tendencies that they're saying that he has.
Right.
Or even just the rap industry in general, right? They're saying that a lot of this came from them dealing with these high up executives like Clive Davis and other people. Not saying that it's true, but that's what people believe, that, you know, they kind of make a deal with the devil so that they can become successful.
Which, and now that this is coming out, and I think about like rap lyrics, you know, from way back in the day when I was, you know, in high school and things, and this whole gangster rap type East Coast, West Coast thing.
That was doo-wop when you were in high school.
I don't know what doo-wop is, but I remember lyrics where, you know, like Eazy-E versus Dr. Dre, and they were all going back and forth. You know, Eazy-E's telling, you know, on a song that Dr. Dre wears lipstick and dresses in a dress, or
and you know,
that
B.I.G.
you know is
versus
having gay relations with their managers or the producers, you know, and that there's some, you know, Jewish white guys running them, you know, things like that were involved in the music industry well back then, and I didn't even think anything about it.
Right. Yep. The only other thing I want to talk about on the statute of limitations and timing is we see this a lot in our work. You know, sometimes we have to file things right up against the statute.
Yeah.
And you know, some of those reasons are, a lot of times you may not have the information, you know, and for us, like a premise liability case or a car accident case or a death case, we try to always do 6 months at least prior to the statute, so make sure the service and all that stuff is perfected. But this may be a situation where a lot of times we have to file a case to protect the case. And even in this situation, if you don't know everything, you're
just getting your foot in the door.
Yeah, you're just getting your foot in the door. You have to protect the case. So this could just be it really is just the opening of Pandora's box. We still have discovery to go through, and it may turn out that no harm, no foul. I don't know, but it's interesting to me that it's filed right before the statute to make sure that everything is kept open.
Sure.
Right?
I mean, in our cases, as you said, we try to file them 6 months in advance, but we have cases that a person is injured, and a lot of times injured severely. Think how long that individual is going to be in medical treatment. Sometimes a year and a half. And then we're trying to get medical bills and records from these different medical providers that takes forever.
Right.
It used to not be as bad, but now it just seems like everything takes 3-4 months to get a simple medical record and things. So it may be you're trying to gather and investigate and gather as much information that you can so that you can make your lawsuit or complaint as most in detailed as you can. And then you don't get those records in, time's running out, you end up having to file at the last minute.
Right.
The other situation is where the person doesn't follow our advice by getting early
that's never happened.
By getting early legal advice.
Listen to me.
we tell people on our television show as well as our podcast, if you have a legal question, contact someone who knows about it. Contact a lawyer.
As quick as you can.
They'll talk to you on the phone, do a consultation in the office. They'll tell you whether or not you need a lawyer or not. And sometimes we have people that come to us when there's only a month left before the statute runs.
Yeah.
And we immediately say, yes, you have a legal issue. You have a legal claim. You have damages that we can pursue, but we have to take that case in immediately file suit. Before we have all this stuff, just to protect the case because of the statute of limitations. And then other times we have people that come in or call, a year after the statute of limitations has ran, saying, my husband was killed this way. Is there anything I can do? And we have to have that unfortunate conversation with them that I'm sorry that, the law just prevents you from taking any action at this point.
And the statute is just a hammer, too.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot. I mean,
no look back act in Georgia right now.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, in any, I give you a fact pattern. You can find me something. You can find me an argument or some kind of something to go in front of the judge and say, this is
just give us a chance.
Just give us a chance.
Yeah.
Statute, you're toast. You're toast. I mean, that's it. That's the one thing. All right. So another strange thing is that Diddy's house was raided, FBI, all this stuff has happened.
Yeah.
Why are we hearing civil stuff instead of criminal stuff? Why is that?
So that's the big question that everybody's been asking on social media, right? Is he going to get arrested? Will this lead to criminal charges? But for Diddy, obviously, he has to take into consideration when he's hiring an attorney what's going to be the best way to resolve this, just like the victims are doing. So if they're not bringing forth criminal charges, just like Cassie chose to pursue it civilly because some of the statute issues that she had, you already talked about the burden of proof, they're looking for different types of evidence. And with the raid, that doesn't mean that they won't pursue criminal charges if they get the evidence to do it, right? Shawn already talked about how you might end up in a criminal case after they've started their investigation if it looks like a crime has been committed.
Right.
We just haven't gotten to that point yet, but anybody with common sense who's reading the charges, you hear things like rape, you hear things like sex trafficking, you hear drugs and all kinds of illegal activity. Everyone's like, well, where's the crime? Because we can clearly see it going on. But the burden of proof is different, and the powers that be who get to control that are the prosecutors, and they haven't made that decision yet.
And just to talk about, we keep talking about burden of proof, and for the layman's, I think we probably covered it numerous times in prior podcasts. But
it's important, especially in this type of case. It's very important.
In a civil case, the burden of proof is a preponderance of the evidence. That simply means that 51%.
It's just it's a scale.
It's a scale.
If you get it heavy ones, just a tiny bit, you win. That's it.
Exactly. In the American legal system, in criminal, it's proof beyond a reasonable doubt, which is the highest legal standard.
And there's no number associated with it.
No,
it's not 51, not 75.
What do they say in the jury charges all the time? it's not a mathematical certainty.
Exactly.
Right.
But, you know, as a criminal defense attorney, a lot of
It
times I
basically
say,
is.
jurors, you should be mathematically certain that this occurred prior
Exactly.
to you convicting my client.
My dad's argument on the other side, and I'm sure y'all's both as prosecutors were, you know, it's a reasonable doubt. It's not just, you know,
Sure.
it's
Not
still,
all doubts.
Not all doubts.
Not every single doubt. That's what they like to say.
And what I've always, you know, told them is just saying that a reasonable doubt. We picked every single one of you jurors individually to sit on this jury panel.
Yeah.
And if you have any doubt whatsoever,
See,
then it's a reasonable
then it's
doubt.
Exactly.
Because you're all reasonable people.
Yeah. And then
I
don't-
love those arguments. The fight over what's a reasonable doubt, not. Yeah.
But don't forget, I mean, we've also seen cases like R. Kelly. We've seen Bill
Yeah.
Cosby. Those all started with civil suits. And
Right.
unfortunately, you know, for the people involved on the defense side, we know where they ended up. They're incarcerated. So
that's-
it can always lead to a criminal charge at some
Absolutely.
point.
And the weird thing is, so when you're talking about these people being, you know, celebrities and all this stuff, the difference is what I think the general public needs to understand is it's almost the exact opposite of how our world works.
Yeah.
Usually for us, criminal happens before civil.
Yeah.
And because people don't have the money,
So
they
they
don't
call
have
the
all
police
this
and
money.
report it immediately.
If you sue me, you're not getting nothing.
Exactly.
You ain't getting Diddy's money. You're getting Reid's money. Reid's money is useless.
Exactly.
So
I think Reid's just trying to cover himself.
yeah. But honestly though, that's the reason is that, you know, generally people don't have. This dude's a billionaire.
Yeah.
Sure.
Like you can go out. You know, we have to go through insurance.
Exactly.
If I'm suing Diddy, I ain't worried about insurance.
And that also explains why you'd be more
I'm
hesitant
taking a
to
house
call
in
the
Miami
police.
or the Bahamas or, you know, we'll just settle for that. You give me that.
Yeah.
So
Even.
But it's interesting to me because most of our stuff, and we have a lot of cases that are civil and criminal. Let's
Yeah.
say a car accident, right?
sure.
We might have the person who was injured in the car. Well, the driver of the at-fault car may face criminal charges, and we wait until they're convicted, and then we use that. In these types of cases, the state or the government is actually waiting on the civil attorneys to finish because there is no statute of limitation on these criminal charges.
And the victims in the civil case would get a lot less if obviously
Absolutely.
they move forward with the criminal case right now and he were to get convicted.
Right.
Those assets might disappear very quickly.
So, all right, we covered that. Now, here's where Reid's conspiracy theories start coming.
Okay,
on.
let's hear it.
Let's do it. So, there's a man named Clive Davis.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and Clive Davis is an older Jewish gentleman. He has been in charge of lots of musicians. Just to name a couple: TLC, Whitney Houston, and Brandy. No coincidence that some of those people are unalived. But in around when Diddy was about 22, 23, 24, he's broke. Tupac's been killed. Biggie's been killed. Clive just kind of saves the day, and Bad Boys Records comes to existence, right?
Took him under his wing.
Under his wing. Well, Clive Davis is not a very good man.
Great businessman. though.
Great businessman, but he kind of what would you call it? Groomed.
Yeah,
Diddy
so
a little
some people
bit.
call it grooming, but I'm assuming Diddy's going to say he just taught him about finances, right? He didn't
Right.
really get into the sexual acts of it, but conspiracy theorists such as yourself would say that he
I love how you
basically-
pin this on me.
I mean,
But it is true.
yeah,
I believe
and
it.
especially if anybody powerful is listening. I don't
Yeah.
believe anything
I
that's
believe
being
it all.
associated with these people, right? But you see a young man, he needs some money. You flash it in front of him like, hey, man, everybody else is doing it. This is how you get rich. If you want to get in the rap industry, all the rappers are doing it. It's kind of like what Lil Rod says in his allegations of, well, Diddy knew I liked Stevie J. He told me, hey, Stevie J engages in sex with men, so
Yeah.
you should do it too.
And showed him a
you'll
video
get rich.
of it.
Yeah,
Showed him a
exactly.
video.
So he's like, look, people are doing these things for free, but I'll pay you millions of dollars to do it.
Yeah.
And he just dangled some shiny money, diamonds,
Whatever you want to call
celebrity status
Whatever you
in
call it.
exchange for him
Let's
engaging
keep
in.
it PG and not
sexual
talk about
activity.
what's being dangled in front of people, okay, Tianna? We have a different viewership than you might be used to.
But it's
But
just
grooming
it
nonetheless.
is very interesting that Clive Davis is involved.
Yes.
And he has been involved in a lot of shady stuff. Allegedly.
And it's so interesting that there's so many different people that there's allegations out there that this has occurred with,
Yeah.
So I mean, it makes it, when I look at it, it makes it look like, well, there's this many allegations, when obviously they say, oh, that didn't happen to me, because they don't want to be outed by it. But when there's this many people saying, I walked into a bedroom and saw this, and there's big names both in the music industry and the acting industry that are brought out there. It's like, is there, what I always say, when there's smoke, there's some type of fire. Every one of them might not be true, but it seems like it's more. There's a lot more of it than we knew about in the past, and this is all bringing it to light.
And this to me is one of those situations where the top dog is not going to get killed.
Yeah.
And I don't think Diddy's the top dog.
Well, that's what Candace is saying. She just said that recently, that this is just one big conspiracy.
Candace,
what is her last name? Owens. I don't follow her, but I did see recently on social media, she said that Diddy is just the fall guy, right?
Sure.
And that these other high execs are just trying to cover things up for him.
I'll take offense to that, because he's not a fall guy. Anybody who's a billionaire is not a fall guy. But now he is kind of, but it also reminds me.
We might be used to not being wealthy, but for Diddy, that might be a big adjustment.
But that's what I was about to say. I was going to state what Shaq said years and years ago when he was talking about people were calling him rich, and or calling him wealthy. That's what it was, excuse me. Because he was making these giant salaries, right?
Yeah.
He said, I'm rich. The people who pay my salaries are wealthy. And there's a lot of truth to that.
Sure.
And so Diddy is very rich, and he is wealthy, obviously.
So what's beyond a billionaire then? The people who made Diddy
the people
billionaire.
in charge. And so here's what I want to put out there a little bit, and hopefully I don't wind up at the bottom of the river.
Alone,
yeah.
Not with Tianna.
Yes,
because I don't agree with
that's
this.
Right. Yes, Tianna does not agree at all. So, Diddy filed suit against Ciroc and Diego, and Diego is one of the largest alcohol conglomerates there is.
Is Ciroc not his alcohol?
Yeah,
it was. They pulled the agreement based on some of these allegations.
Okay.
And once his name started to stink a little bit, they didn't want to be associated with him.
So he was more like a, someone that had a business interest, or he was the spokesperson for it. Not necessarily. Ciroc is my company.
Yeah, but for most people, it's like Diddy is Ciroc. Nobody really cared about Ciroc when you go to the liquor store. Diddy gets this contract with Ciroc. Everybody's drinking Ciroc, right? It's like, oh, okay, Diddy's all over the commercials. He's saying it tastes great. We like Diddy. We're going to support him. We have this young black guy who's all relevant in R&B, hip-hop, everywhere. Sure. And Ciroc takes off. And so then they come back years later after they've benefited from his name and his likeness and his image, and they're like, not a great time to be associated with Diddy. We're going to, take our talents elsewhere.
So
Diddy, he's not happy about that.
Well, maybe Shaq can pick that up.
That's true.
He's already taken over, the Papa John's.
Shaq.
The Papa John's guys. I do too. Yeah. He's taken over the Papa John's guys, president or CEO type position.
Yeah.
Maybe he can take over Diddy's position at Ciroc.
Well, the interesting thing about it to me is that Diddy sued
Diego.
Yeah. And he sued him for racial discrimination and then a retaliation charge, and I won't get into all that. But just for the folks at home, you go, who is this Diego group? I don't know, right? If you look them up, they're owned by Capital Research and Management Company, and that ranks as the world's oldest and largest investment management organization, with over 2.6 trillion in assets. Now, the other the other two that are involved are BlackRock Investment Management Group. I know you know those.
Absolutely.
BlackRock has been buying up every single family home that exists in America and jacking the prices up.
Okay.
They have a lot of power. And then the Vanguard Group. The Vanguard group has been in every conspiracy theory that I've heard on the internet over the last 15 years.
Wow.
So if those three entities are the owner of...
Then it makes it more likely that Diddy is the fall guy.
There you go. That's just my opinion. Now, he's not necessarily the fall guy, in my opinion.
But they're just trying to use him to distract everybody from what they're doing.
He's the top dude that they're going to give up.
So fall guy doesn't mean Diddy didn't do it, right? It just means, hey, y'all focus on what Diddy did and not on what we're doing over here.
There you go. And so Diddy sued them for racial discrimination and lawful retaliation. He has since dropped that lawsuit after all this stuff came down.
Might be pretty difficult now.
But he filed that lawsuit prior to all this stuff coming down on Diddy. Which I find very interesting.
Well, I hope he settled it at least so that he could pay some of these legal fees that are coming right now and probably much to come in the future.
Yes, I am sure. And as that suit came about, more and more information came out about Diddy. Dangling Wale over the balcony.
Yes.
The explosion in Kid Cudi's car. And then one thing for
I don't know what anything y'all are talking about.
I know you don't, but this one you will. This one you will. Do you know Family Matters?
Yes, I did see that. Carl Winslow.
Carl Winslow.
Dirty Digits.
Dirty Digits with Diddy. So, I think that this thing is just starting to bubble over.
They're exposing everybody. I'm learning things about celebrities I never would have imagined.
Right, but the problem is,
or you're learning allegations.
Allegations.
Allegations. But there's going to be a lot of and apologies for trigger warning, all that. But there's going to be a lot of Epstein people in this situation.
What's going on with him, by the way? Haven't heard his name in a while.
Well, he's been dead.
I mean, nobody's trying to go after his estate or anything.
Nobody's.
There's plenty
They
of
just
money.
stopped right there.
Disney World, Disneyland, just purchased or is in the process of purchasing Epstein Island.
See?
That's a perfect. Oof.
I threw you the alley-oop there.
I was just
didn't know about it.
All right. Tell you where my family's not going. To Disney Epstein Island.
It's the land, not what occurred there.
I don't care. I'm not going. Are you kidding me?
I might not be a conspiracy theorist, but I don't want to be around that kind of juju.
No. So anyway, that's kind of where we are in the Diddy case. I do think that there's going to be some criminal charges coming up, but as y'all both know, when the FBI gets involved, when the federal government gets involved, it takes a lot longer.
Once you start hearing acronyms, it's only downhill from there.
Yeah.
FBI, IRS.
Y'all know you'll get charged from the state relatively quick.
Sure.
But the FBI,
it's a long game.
It may be 2 years before you're charged, but they have it wrapped up, buttoned up, ready to go.
Yeah.
And so I know Diddy's powerful, but he may have pissed off some more powerful people in BlackRock and Vanguard. Don't kill me. Vanguard and BlackRock.
You already told them you didn't have any money.
Yeah, I don't have any money. Don't worry about it. So it's going to be interesting, and I hope we can continue to bring it to y'all, because I think there's going to be some explosions in the news.
Yeah,
pretty recent. Pretty
Shawn,
soon.
Do you think he's going to settle this one like he did with Cassie, or?
Well, I don't know why he didn't settle it the day after like he did with Cassie.
Well, I think that was more of a strategy of, let me go ahead and give her some hush money so that we wouldn't get here, and that didn't work.
His mistake was he didn't pay her off before she filed the lawsuit.
Correct.
Well, and that every time I think about it, the only thing I think about is we never know very rarely do we know what these settlements are.
Mm-hmm.
You never do.
So if someone comes at P. Diddy, who is a billionaire, with a lawsuit,
I think he got certified as a billionaire in 2022.
And his attorneys say, give this girl $500,000 to go away. Otherwise, we're going to be, in this process, you're going to have $500,000 or more in legal fees, and it's going to be, bad publicity for you, everything.
Yeah.
And he says, okay, give her $500,000, or give her $100,000, and she goes away.
$5 million.
So we never even know
he's
about
got
$1
billion.
We always assume that a settlement means that this person accepted responsibility.
The settlement does not at all show guilt.
Which he never
It does
did.
not.
And he just made a post recently of him outer space. It was like an AI post, but nonetheless.
Of him in outer space?
Yeah, it was like him in 83,000 and something. So maybe he's thinking about brighter times in the future.
You have to procreate. You can't do that with other men. So that's not going to work. That's not going to work.
Diddy has tons of kids.
He's got like 7.
He's got
like
a
7.
new baby. That's what the Love album was named after.
Oh, really?
She's very adorable too. Her name is Love.
Okay.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
like 3.
All right.
But I don't know how
That she's not as adorable as Porter.
Yeah, that's a tough competition there.
He's a stud.
Well, I think that's enough nonsense for today, including for myself.
Yes.
But we will definitely pick this up maybe in a week or two and see
If
where
you're
we
still
are.
alive.
Yes. If I am knocked off, I'm telling y'all, just leave it.
Yeah.
Just don't.
I would just like to say that I don't have a lot of money, but I do have some money in Vanguard mutual funds and some other mutual funds that I'm sure have BlackRock in them. So in no way, shape, or form am I saying anything against Vanguard or BlackRock.
Okay. There we go.
Or anybody at all who would kill me.
Yes, exactly. Well, you know, I'm a braver man. So anyway, that'll do it for this episode of the Layman's Law School. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Probably didn't learn much, but if you did, I hope you did.
And comment and tell us if you think Diddy did it.
Yes.
That would be great.
Did he do it?
We should start a poll.
Yeah.
Did he do it?
Did he do it?
Dirty digits. Lots of D's around here.
Well, thank you all for watching. Please, if you have any topics that you would like for us to cover, leave them in the comment. Please like, follow, and subscribe, and we will see you next time.
Just a regular YouTuber.